The stumbling block that affected Israel was in failing to recognize the reason the law was given in the first place. That is, they saw the law to be an end of itself rather than the means it was intended to be. As Paul says, now before faith came, we were held in custody under the law, having been locked up until faith being about to be revealed, so that the law has become our trainer unto Christ, so that we might be justified by faith. And faith having come, we are no longer under a trainer. Galatians 3:23-25. The law was meant to bring them to the Messiah, to whom the promise was given in Abraham, and that the law was never meant to justify the sinner, but to condemn him. The common problem that affected both Jew and Gentile was the state of fallen flesh of mankind in which sin dwelt. So the basic essence of the law is not for the purpose of justification, but to expose sin that was hidden in our body without our knowledge. As Paul says, I have not known sin, if not by law. And indeed, I had not been conscious of covetousness, if the law had not said, you shall not covet. Romans 7:7. The law dictates what we ought not to do, and if sin was not present in the world, we would have no need for such commandments. The result of which is that the law of God serves to provoke sin that was found in our body, so that we may be made aware of the need we have of the mercy of God, that we may live in His grace. As such, Paul says, by the works of the law, not any flesh will be justified before Him, for through the law is knowledge of sin. Romans 3:20. For which purpose Paul calls the law the ministry of death and the ministry of condemnation. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 7 and 9. So through the law, we do not find the justification of our conscience. So we are forever propelled in a mindset of making restitution year after year, but never finding justification, being mindful of the sinfulness of our ways. The fact that we feel compelled to make an offering for our sin is the evidence of a condemned conscience. For it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. Hebrews 10:4. So when the Lord came seeking fruit from the fig tree, as the fruit of righteousness in a conscience that is cleansed from the condemnation of sin, He found none, but only fig leaves, that is the appearance of righteousness. The leaves are an expression for the covering of the flesh, as it was in the Garden of Eden, through various ordinances without addressing the heart issue, that is the presence of sin in the body, which compelled mankind to do all manner of wickedness, and a conscience that is evil. So animal sacrifice in the law became a means for a temporary covering for mankind. Nevertheless, we are kept at a distance, as Adam and Eve were ushered out of the Garden of Eden, even though their shame was covered with a tunic of animal skin which God Himself had made. And Pastor Joseph Prince illustrates how at the giving of the law, at the foot of Mount Sinai, God clearly stipulated to Moses for the people not to draw near, lest they die. Meaning, the law is given to govern the lawless. As such, the law does not address the root cause, it simply treats the symptoms. For which reason Paul says, for of the law being powerless, in that it was weak through the flesh, God having sent His Son in the likeness of sin of flesh, and for sin, condemned sin in the flesh, so that the righteousness of the law should be fulfilled in us, not walking according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. Romans 8:3-4. And again he says, for indeed there is a putting away of the preceding commandments, because of its weakness and uselessness, for the law perfected nothing, and the introduction of a better hope by which we draw near to God. Hebrews 7:18-19. That is God in addressing the purpose for which the law was given in the first place, that is the nature of sinful flesh. He has made the law to be obsolete. But Israel, failing to perceive this, has made the pursuit of righteousness through the works of the body, tainted by sin, to be their objective. And Paul, describing their dilemma, writes, Israel, pursuing a law of righteousness, did not attain to that law. Why? Because it was not by faith, but as by works. They stumbled over the stone of stumbling. Romans 9:31-32. The body of sin is not meant to be beautified by the works of the law. It can only be put to death according to the one through whom sin was first entered into the world. So until Israel perceives the reason the Messiah had to suffer death through the sacrifice of himself in order to deal with the root cause, they remain blinded. As the Lord said, O foolish and slow of heart to believe in all the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary for the Christ to suffer these things and to enter into his glory? Luke 24, 25-26. And Paul says, but their minds were hardened, for until the present day, the same veil remains at the reading of the old covenant, not being lifted, which is being removed in Christ. But unto this day, when Moses shall be read, a veil lies over their hearts. But whenever one shall have turned to the Lord, the veil is taken away. 2 Corinthians 3, 14-16.